All righty, welcome to the January meeting of the Beaver Dam Lake Protection and Rehabilitation District Resident Advisory Board. It is 7:03. Call the meeting to order. Yes. Let's do a couple of welcomes and introductions. You know me already. I'm Erica Dahl. Here in the building with me, I have Fred Widman, Walter Bloss, Larry Weinberg, and our newest member. Welcome, Jason Younes. Jason, do you want to tell us anything about yourself? Where you live on the lake?
I'm down the street on Shore and
New Windsor.
New
Windsor, beautiful.
Right on the border of what's that other town? Cornwall.
Okay. High tax area. It's close.
Welcome. And just to save time later, Chris, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, who's exactly the newest one?
You are.
Soon to be.
By technicality, everybody will be explained this soon. But yeah, I'm Chris Dunn, Shore Drive also, and been involved since I was appointed last February last year, and it's been fun.
Awesome. All righty. Shall we do the pledge? Our flag is back now that our Christmas tree is gone. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Moved.
Second.
Right.
Okay.
Aye.
Favor. Aye. Beautiful. All right. So administrative, I just want to welcome Jason again. If you missed the December meeting, he was elected on the second Tuesday of December when we had our resident advisory board election here in the building. And we went over the results of that election at the last meeting. And there was, if you weren't at the last meeting, there was mishap with the mail. Petitions didn't make it on time because there was an issue with the post office, and then they were returned to the resident who sent them, who happened to be Chris Dunn, who's been on our board for a year now, as he mentioned before. And now we have a vacant seat in New Windsor. So we had 2 seats open up in New Windsor. One got filled by Jason, which we're very excited about, and one remains vacant. So as a board, we are able to appoint somebody to fill that vacant position. And I would like to nominate Chris Dunn to fill the vacancy in the New Windsor position. Molly seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So pending legislative approval, which is something that happens just as a formality after all of our elections and all of our appointments, Chris and Jason will be official board members, and welcome to the chaos of the Beaver Dam Lake Board.
Which you're very familiar with.
Yeah.
How many board members do we have?
We are a fully loaded board now. We have 7 board members.
And that's 4 New Windsor. 2 Cornwall, and 1
Swimming Grove.
Grove.
Yes. All righty. So at our January meeting, what we do is we elect our officers for the year to come. So the 3 officers that are the 3 positions that we elect for our chair, vice chair, and secretary. So we need a nomination for chair.
I nominate Erica Dahl. That's okay.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Stop the nomination. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wow.
Fantastic. Vice chair, I'm going to go ahead and appoint Walter Bloss. I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and nominate Walter Bloss. Do I have a second?
Yeah, second.
Second
All
that.
in favor?
Aye.
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 Alrighty, and Secretary Colette left. She was our secretary prior, so I would like to nominate Larry Weinberg as secretary. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, thank you for the appointment. I really appreciate it.
Well, it comes a special privilege.
Yeah.
Got to shave them.
I did already. Already down. You should have seen how big it was.
He's still not as good looking as Colette.
All right, so we have already done our appointing of Chris, which is very exciting. And then the meeting schedule for this year, it currently stands at the second Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. So does this work for board members, or would you like to push it back, or would you like to reschedule?
I'd like to consider moving it forward to 6:30.
Moving it up to 6:30?
Pardon?
So moving it up to 6:30?
Up 6:30, yeah, so we're not ending at 8 o'clock at night.
I'm fine with the anytime change.
30.
I don't care.
You good for 6:30?
For the early bird special dinner people, huh? Is that
Someday
what-
you'll realize what it's all about.
Someone's got to go to bed by 8.
Pumpkin's got to go to bed.
That's
by
what it's
8.
really about. Yeah, I'm okay with
Yeah.
6.
Because Molly's dog. All right, 6:30 it is, if you guys are okay with me having to zoom in sometimes.
And we can adjust as we need to.
Okay, so 6:30 will be the new,
Did you say you have to zoom in?
sometimes I'll have to zoom in if we're 6:30, but that's okay
Well,
with me.
on those occasions, we'll move it to 7.
Okay.
Okay.
So 6:30, second Wednesday of each month, unless otherwise noted, and we will let folks know via the email that you got the link on for this meeting. All right, so we have a lot of lake health to talk about tonight, and I'm very excited that I am not going to be the one to talk about it. So first, I will send it to Wally to fill us in on some of the lake treatment stuff we have going on.
To keep it brief, on schedule, no issues. No, I'm kidding.
It's not a thing.
Actually, I am going to keep it as brief as I possibly can, because there is no new information other than the fact, welcome to 2023. The budget input was provided and approved for back in June of 2022. The budget is approved for 2023. So we have the funding necessary to do the the anticipated algicide, herbicide, and permitting, as well as a placeholder for general services with pond and lake connection if needed. The pond and lake contract right now is good through March of 2024, and there's an automatic built-in extension for 2 additional years if we need it. So we don't actually have to rebid it until March of 2026. So that's good. Pond and Lake Connection is planning their first inspection for 2023 in April. They're going to come out and do a site visit, see how things are going, and that'll lay out a foundation how we're going to proceed into the spring. Right now, the first herbicide treatment is planned for early May. That's only if needed based on the inspection. The DPW ties right into it, is working on still approving the grant with the DEC. That was a $100,000 grant for dealing with invasive species. They requested information from us in December, so that it's still moving forward, and we still anticipate that the extension will be provided to us. And we provided that information to the DPW in December of 2022. Fred will talk more about this, but there was a assessment done on our lake by Prism, and they generated a report. I forwarded the copy of that report to Pond and Lake Connection as input for their planning for treatments that might be necessary, and all kind of dovetails together. Pond and Lake Connection will do our treatments for invasive species. The grant ties into that, and the Prism provides input into it. And I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
So Prism, maybe everybody would like to get an update on what Prism is.
Yeah, Fred's going to talk about that in detail on the agenda item. Anyone to steal his thunder? Fred's like,
If we can rotate the agenda a little bit so that
Yeah.
Fred can jump in and just talk about Prism.
Okay. At last year's NYSFOLA meeting, a representative of the Lower Hudson Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management, otherwise known as PRISM, talked to me about, they requested the permission to do a sampling of our lake at no cost to us. They're managed by the Department of Environmental Conservation with the state. So it's not a fly-by-night organization, but the sampling is performed by them twice a season, once in June and once in early September. I was here when they did both of their samplings, and there's about a team of about 8 people who go out in canoes and do actual samplings of the surface of the bottom of the lake. They actually do rake draws, and they had a total of 190 sampling points each time. And they investigated what was brought up, what types of plants, whether they be native plants or invasives, and in some cases, invertebrates. By invertebrates, they mean something that we've had notice of for a while is called Chinese mystery snails. Where it got that name from, I have no idea, but they're called Chinese mystery snails. They are invasives. We don't have a major problem with them, but they have found some presence. Some lakes have a major problem with them, and they can do a job on a lot of the aquatic life. But what they did find is typical invasives that is common for New York State lakes, which include Eurasian water milfoil, what's known as brittle naiad, curly leaf pondweed, a slight presence of water chestnut, and of course the mystery snails. What we did see is that the worst area that they found based on a map that they gave us, is in the northern area where we have a major inlet. They found a lot of normal vegetation as well as invasive vegetation. There was an evidence that with the treatments that Pond and Lake performed during the year, a lot of the vegetation did decrease. One thing that I wanted to point out that they did find some what's known as water chestnuts. Not very many. In fact, none during the second sampling. And I just want to point out that the water chestnuts can literally take over the lake, and they are not subject to herbicide treatments, as we've found out with Nicefola, with many of the experts there. So about, I'd say 4 years ago, there was an extensive harvesting that took place. It was around Reserve 5. And there was about maybe 20 of us that actually literally physically went out and harvested the water chestnuts. And since that time, there's been very little evidence of it in the lake. So really the only way you can get rid of that stuff is physical harvesting. And I'm not going to go into detail about how it propagates or anything else, but just it's not a major problem. It could have been, but it's not a major problem. So the board has a copy of the report that was sent by PRISM. I don't know whether this is something they're going to want to do again next year. I'm assuming this fellow, Devin, will be in contact with me again to see if they're going to continue the sampling process. But that's basically it. And that report, as Wally said, has been sent to Pond and Lake so they can see what the agency found.
And these are invasive species, Fred?
Yes, the ones I mentioned are invasives. They also gave us a list of the normal vegetation that was found in the lake, which is not considered invasive. Now, don't ask me for the definition. I guess it's things that are not normal to this area. For instance, the curly leaf pondweed. It's things that would not normally be found, except that they get here through people not clearing their boat off properly before it comes into the lake or other areas.
Okay. Now, the PRISM spent a lot of time here and did a lot of sampling. What was the cost to the residents?
Nothing.
Exactly.
Zero. I said that. No cost to us.
Just want to reemphasize that.
Emphasis zero. Nada.
Thank you.
Fred, do you think there's a benefit do you think there's a benefit to sharing that report on the website so folks are curious about it? I'm thinking like if people have the invasives along their shoreline, does it make sense to share this out and try to educate so that they might?
I think there's one portion of the report which identifies what the invasives look like is useful for the residents. A lot of these, from what I'm reading, when they show up, you can almost do more harm by physically removing them because you get little bits breaking off, which ends up floating around and reestablishing. So these are the ones, with the exception of water chestnuts, are better off being handled by herbicides.
Okay, so important for people to know what they are, but
Yes.
don't necessarily need action from folks
Right.
that don't know what they're looking at. But if water chestnut should become a more prevalent issue, we could address it.
Yes, and then they're very obvious as far as what they look like. And yeah, we could put this on the website so people can see it. What these things are involved in. Water chestnuts especially, if you see one, you just go in and you harvest it.
And assuming we're able to get the grant extended as anticipated, these are invasive species. The grant is directed towards addressing invasive species.
In fact, yes, they are. And part of the grant is that your time has a dollar value. So if, for instance,
You go out there and harvest.
what's that?
Like you said, if you go out there and manually pull water chestnuts, your time has a value.
Your time has a value, and that can all be attributed to, see, the grant is payback. It's not money given initially. It's to pay back what you've expended.
Time and money.
So whether it be treatment by pond and lake or other things, that all has a value. So does your time, so much per hour. So a lot of this can be documented.
It's a good, you have to have strong record keeping.
Yes.
Okay. And just to recap one more time, the primary location where they did see the invasives is up in the North Finger.
That was the heaviest location.
Okay.
And although there was some around the island, which is, I guess it's halfway down from the dam.
Right.
There's a large island there, and that seemed to be prevalent with a lot of the species, both native and invasive.
Okay, good.
Shallow over there. too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So reserving where the boat launch is where you may see more of the invasive species, because if they're coming from someplace, I'm guessing that's going to be the spot.
That's true.
But the treatments did have an effect. So it was a good thing.
Yep, it was okay, good. I think we're good.
Any of that ties in with that microscope thing we had going?
That's what I was going to ask also. Whatever happened with that? I mean, did we have to return it because the season is over, isn't it, for the use of the microscope? Have they asked for it? I mean,
not. So I will be waiting until they do. Yeah. So, all right. So that's all about regarding PRISM. But to also answer your question, that really had to do more with the cyanobacteria.
I hate that.
Than the, yeah. All right, Chris, you had additional lake health items.
Yes, and pardon me if I do have to like almost step away at some point. I'm by myself with a 19 and almost 19 and a half year old Jack Russell Terrier who is blind and deaf, and I'm holding him at the moment.
Oh.
There's nobody home, and sometimes he likes to bark when nobody's around. I'm just warning you right now. Okay. So to tie all of this in, there's a lot of lake health issues, as Erica was saying. For those people that have been following all through last year, I just wanted to kind of revive the investigation of the Little Britain school septic system. So for those that may remember, at last glance in September, Little Britain School had been found in violation by the New York State DEC for not possessing the proper SPEDIES permit, which is the State Pollutant Discharge and Elimination Permit Program permit. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they were polluting. It just means they were not in possession of the correct permit, because they did go through a period of time where they went from a in-ground wastewater releasing and treatment facility that was on premises, and the treatment facility had gone into disrepair. They were asked to have it removed. They had done so, which leaves them with a very large septic system. By the way, I had been told by the school district that that septic system, the tanks are inspected and cleaned twice a year. So just to bring everybody back to speed, this doesn't mean we're after the school or we're after Washingtonville School District for polluting, because things like that can just kind of get out and they can say, oh, did you hear that the board is accusing them? No, what we're doing is we're going on evidence that about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, another company that we had working for us, Northeastern Aquatic Research, had spit out some numbers that was indicative of, and Wally and I have said this, Wally way more times than I over the last year or two, mentioned that there were nutrient levels indicative of a quote sewer leak. Does that mean it's a sewer leak? No, but it's coming from somewhere. And if you do the math, upstream is Little Britain School. So that has been the lead that we've been kind of following. Now that brings us to the response back from Senator Skoufis's office, and I'll just read that a portion of that briefly right now. At the time of our inspection, we found that the school's wastewater system was discharging to the ground and had not been discharging to a surface water. So they're not being accused of a runoff. Ground discharge simply means septic system. By the way, if anybody wants to interrupt, if anybody has any questions, please do so, because this could start to seem lengthy, and I'm trying to not get into the the weeds here.
In the chat box, put your questions and comments put your questions and comments in the chat box.
Yeah, and then Erica can maybe spit them back at me. So that they have had a groundwater discharge for approximately 10 years. By the way, it's actually more than 20 years. We asked that they do the proper decommissioning of the old treatment system, request deletion of the Speedies permit. By the way, this is Skoufis's office saying this. They completed the decommissioning in September of 21 and sent the attached request for the deletion. In January of 22, they submitted the Speedies PCI application. The application was under review by the DEC, and it was determined that the current treatment system did not have the engineering plan approval. So what it seems to be is that when they decommissioned the old system, they went ahead and just installed the septic system without getting the proper permit. Is that septic system adequate? We don't know. And that's where I'm going to jump back to that in a little bit. So until they get the proper, sorry, put the dog down. Until they get the proper permit, will they be legal? We'll see. So at the moment, the Department of Water through the DEC will be issuing this notice of violation. The engineering consultant for the school and its process developing and submitting plans to the Orange County Department of Health. Once Department of Water receives flow confirmation from the Department of the Orange County Department of Health, Department of Water, technical review, the permit will be issued. Now, this is the bottom line. Department of Water is not aware of any sewage discharge from the school into Beaver Dam Lake or the tributaries. Now, that's where this comes into play. Now, you just heard, it's I think it's a benefit that Fred was just describing PRISM. And PRISM is not something that we have paid for. And it is surveying in the lake, but not the tributaries. Now, back in the spring, we as a board voted on allotting, it was $30,000, I believe, for lake management, Erica, correct?
Yep. Yes.
So through this year, we've been talking to different companies, and recently we got a really good breakdown from one company in particular for the board to review. I'll briefly just discuss some of the services that we may receive from them. But of course, these are fee services. So what will happen from time to time is that we're going to get a crossroads between sampling and testing for things that we have potentially gotten some answers to for free. So naturally, some people are going to say, well, why would we approve testing, additional testing, where we're going to pay for it? Well, no matter what, we have all agreed, we've spoken about this many times, that and tell me if I'm wrong, that we are looking to have a management company of lake scientists that could steer us when we need it, to take some of the more obvious data and some of maybe the less obvious data, work it out, work with people like Pond and Lake Connection, and get their treatments to be more specific and to help out. Even in my education process of all this, at first it was not as clear the complete value of having a lake management company. Some lakes take care of it themselves. In fact, many do, whether it's an advisory board or an actual, board that manages every single function of the lake, more of a homeowners association. When they have a company come in to treat, are they going by just the data that one company is collecting? Are they collecting? Are they just kind of eyeballing it? There's a lot of things that go in to make it more specific. So, just to jump ahead. So let's see. We're requesting, and I'll come back to the Schoolfish part in a bit, but we're requesting possibly a quote, request for quote for a lake management company with the limit of $30,000. Now, at the moment, we are not approaching $30,000 for these services. We are still in the $15,000, maybe up to $20,000 range. It seems to be, whether or not that requires us to buy any equipment. I think we had spoken about this maybe at one of the meetings. I think, Fred, you had mentioned that an oxygen sensor was something that we had, or is that something that is not functioning?
I have not had a chance to come down and look at it. I was told we have an oxygen test kit.
Okay.
It doesn't mean a sensor. I'm thinking when you say sensor,
Dissolved
better
oxygen.
ones are actually an electrode that's placed into a water sample to give an accurate reading. And if we do have just a test kit, there's a decent possibility that the reagents may have been expired. So I have to be sure on that. I have to test what's available in the office.
So that's a fee that we could incur. It's between $2,000 to $3,000 for the specific unit that was presented to me. I know there's lots of other units out there, but these are all just ideas, things that we as a board and the Lake Health Committee have to discuss further. But I think it's safe to say we do intend to get everything tied together and make our request in the next 4 to 6 weeks, no later, because we would like to get a company out here and ready to go for the beginning of the 23 season, which is roughly April 1st, right? Whenever we're, pretty much the lake starts warming up and things start coming alive, when people start putting their boats back in, and that's the time to start testing. So one of the things to keep costs down was to do a volunteer sampling. It would consist of 8 times, just like the CSLAP. A couple of us had been speaking internally about this. The idea was, in order to keep fees down, if we could do testing of in-lake as well as tributaries, we could get a better picture of what is exactly affecting the lake. And when we tie that in with a bathymetry survey, because it was under question whether or not we had a really recent survey. A bathymetry survey has to do with the lake depths, the contour, and the soil composition. Being that we didn't have water in the lake for 2 years, personally, I had watched certain areas of the lake change their elevations because of erosion. As Beaver Brook cut through the lake, it would erode channels. So there's some areas of the lake that may not be the same depth. They could be shallow. Or deeper than, say, 3 years ago. Why is this significant? Well, it could help out with invasive species, aquatic pesticide treatments, testing, doing fish surveys. It's kind of like a early on gathering of information before we, move forward into later years of taking things further. Whether or not we find out how big our problems are, and some of them may not be so large, as we just got good news back from PRISM. So volunteer sampling, we cut out the lab fee cost because it's being done same time as CSLAP. Also, but the real important one might be doing the tributary survey, because that is where it's going to tie back into the Little Britain possibility. And one of the things that I had mentioned about what Department of Water had basically said was, we do not know Little Britain School to be polluting to the tributaries. Well, nobody seems to be looking to figure that out. And this seems to be one of those where we ourselves, if we want to be good stewards of our lake, are going to have to take it into our own and get these tested and be more specific. And if it's not Little Britain School, then we need to find out where it's coming from, because this will directly and significantly reduce algae blooms, because we're talking about nutrient loading, and will cut down some of the growth of these, other plants, whether they're invasive or native. So that's just something that we're going to be bringing up probably in the next meeting, more specifics about the request for quote. And I already covered, I said that it would actually help out Pond and Lake connection to pinpoint the best treatment prescription. Something else that might be a little bit of a question to some is a fishery survey. We had just done good work stocking the lake with, and Wally can speak to this, I'm sure, again, bass and it was crappie and I'm blanking here, and fathead minnows, right?
Yes, crappies,
minnows, yellow perch are deferred till this year.
That's right. That's yes. So through a fishery survey, basically we'd understand the current populations, the changes, and the idea of so there's a process where you actually, through a DC current, a boat would go out and they put a low level pulse, a voltage to the lake at night, and it makes the fish, it doesn't hurt the fish, it makes whatever's living in the lake rise, where a crew can go out. And this is one of these pay for service services where this company would survey every single fish that they can net and find in the lake to see how well our bass and crappies are doing, and see if maybe it makes sense to introduce any other species or leave it all alone. So there's value in that, possibly, potentially, and that's something else that we're going to have to discuss. Am I going too fast? Anybody? Probably. Did I put anybody to sleep? I hope not.
You have no questions so far.
Okay. All right. So that's it. So basically, going back to the loose end section, when we have been when I mentioned, do you guys hear the dog?
Yes, but we're okay.
All right, hold on.
No, you're good.
He's 98 years old, basically.
It's okay.
It's only that. So am I.
All right. Okay, I got him. So to tie this in and make this more significant, not such a jumbled mess of information, how can getting a lake management company, why else getting a lake management company, besides giving us more specific information that we sort of know through CSLAP, through PRISM, and some other surveys and tests that have been done in the last 4 to 5 years. I mean, how much has the lake changed? It has changed since the dam is built. We're not completely certain. So when it comes back to any government agency helping us out, and this is when I could tie this into any grants and any type of major changes in the municipality like sewers, we need to substantiate our data. And it has to be very specific. And it needs to be more frequent, and it has to be without fail accurate. So having a company come in to get tributary information as well as in-lake information to then start to pinpoint, look, Senator Skoufis, look, DEC, look, Department of Water, Washingtonville School District, New Windsor Sewer Department. There's something up here and we need to dig deeper. It can't just happens to be me. It has not always been me in the past. Somebody just kind of scratching around and trying to figure this all out. And are they polluting? Are they not polluting? Information like this is going to lead to possible legislation, we would hope. The big question, and this is where I actually posed to Senator Skoufis's office just a few days ago, that he himself, because he has staff that have been answering questions and they've been great, but make a personal inspection. That he would ask, I was reading a different line, that he would ask local officials, is now not the time to connect Little Britain School to the New Windsor sewer? And what does that take? Because it has been brought up in prior meetings that there is a sewer pump station for New Windsor within 300 to 400 yards away. And why is it a problem? Why is this school, such a fairly large school of several hundred children and staff, on a septic system that, if you remember, did not get engineering approval for what they put in the ground? So there is a potential that if they don't get this permit approval, they're going to have to go offline and dig it up. And then what does the school do? Lots of porta potties in the parking lot. So I'm just trying to put out the idea of the importance of this. We can leave this alone and keep scratching our head as to where all the nutrients are coming from, or we could go down this road, get a company approved to get the testing, to get the data, to get our elected officials to help us get to the bottom of this and possibly get the school hooked up to the sewer. And then we could not worry about it in the future. And for 50 years from now, Beaver Dam Lake residents won't have to worry about a school innocently. If they're not doing this, vindictively, of course, but innocently, possibly polluting our lake and the entire 4-mile stream that goes towards the lake. So, and then we could start shooting other fish in the barrel of the rest of the area and the and possible tributaries also that could be polluting the lake. But we're sort of trying to take this one step at a time. And that was my very long-winded way of trying to say that having a lake management company can tie into us fighting larger battles that will help us down the road, and not simply just tell us how many fish we have or how well the bass are doing, or, oh, we have some, milfoil blowing, exploding in the eastern section. We kind of know that. Most of the people on the board are lake home front owners. Many people that attend these meetings are lakefront owners. We have over, what are we up to now in the community? 700 people, Erica, that live in Beaver Dam?
800
800.
800. So
a little over 800 homes. But Chris, I have a question for you.
go ahead, please.
When we were having this conversation with Northeast Aquatic back a few years ago, we had talked about potentially them advising some advocacy.
Actually,
Exactly.
exactly.
So, the board members, try as we may, are not in the business of lake management. And a lake management company, as we've learned from the NYSVOLA conference and other resources, have really been able to point some other lakes in the direction of how to advocate with their local officials for correction of the issues that are identified. As we're thinking about writing the RFQ or RFB, might we be able to include or think about including a line for, possible advocacy work, or does that make sense? May I make sense?
Yeah, completely. And I'm glad you brought that up. And I do remember us speaking to Northeastern Aquatics about that. Most recently speaking through GEI, that was brought up. And yeah, absolutely. That is something that could help us also with the use of our grant.
Yeah. I know over and over again, it's been raised by community members and folks on the board, the use of collecting data if you don't know what to do with it.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
I would super like someone to advise us on what to do with the data.
Yeah, and because as I sit here and I hope everybody's sort of following me, and it's like, yes, there's a redundancy with collecting data, and we've collected some of it, and you're going to get some of the same results, but we are only really, this is what, year 2, heading into year 3 of the lake. So you kind of have to forget what happened before the lake before the dam was built. So we're a brand new lake. It's not the same. We kind of we could use some of the prior history to point us in the right direction at times, but from reading as many things as I can from different lake management companies, from talking to both Northeastern Aquatics. I was actually speaking to somebody from Solitude. That's a company that's worked for us in the past. And then also GEI, that's 3 different companies, and they had very similar opinions about good data. And I'll just go back to what Wally simply said, probably it feels like an hour ago, but having a strong record and using that strong record. So I feel like a bit of a wrangler at the moment, because there's so much information that we all know it exists, but it's time to pull it together. And I think as a board, we identified that last spring into the summer, that this is a need, but as time goes on, it starts to, we start to lose the direction. So just to let everybody know and to understand is that we are on the precipice of getting a lake management company to come in, because we have a lot of these funds already. It's a matter of how much is it going to cost. Maybe we get 2 services out of them this year, and maybe next year we get 4 services out of them. Do we need a bathymetric survey? We will discuss that. Do we have something that's current, or is the information that we have old? Is old information okay? Maybe. So there's a lot that is going to happen, and I'm going to try to do my best to distill it. And please help me out, everybody, in the future when those pieces start coming into play more.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Does anyone on the board have specific questions for Chris?
Or do you need a drink?
I need a drink first.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Good job presenting, Chris, and we appreciate your efforts going through this. There's a lot of tangible benefits, but it really means to the owners of Beaver Dam Lake is that ultimately the goal of this is there's 3 areas: your prevention, detection, and correction. When we solve 2 comes, or not solve 2, but Pond Lake connection comes out, they're applying chemicals to try to correct the situation. What this does, it brings us back more into the prevention and detection, so we don't have to add chemicals. So in the long term, could actually save money if done properly. So our old goal is to get away from correction and be in prevention and detection. So good job, Chris, on that. Like I said, a lot of tangible benefits. Keep in mind, Chris, now too, that we do have a budget set aside for a vendor to come in and provide the oversight for us. But we also have budget money, I believe, separate line items to purchase the equipment we talked about. The O2 analyzers. You have to go back and look at the budget, but I think there's 4 or 5 different line items related to the equipment that we feel we might need for doing this. And that will not be part of the cost of the vendor oversight. It actually helps reduce the cost. The people part, we're gonna have to get volunteers ultimately involved with this. That's down the road once we get the plan moving. The vendor is going to provide the plan. The biggest thing, I guess, Chris, right now, what's our timeline for getting the bid process going?
Once it's begun, it should be no more than 2 months, but that's why, being it's January, it needs to go soon. It needs to be in February. I know we're going to speak to DPW soon.
Okay.
Hopefully we get that rolling in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Our next DPW meeting will drive that pretty hard. We got to get this moving.
Absolutely. Yeah, because if we miss the window in April, then how good is our information? You know, how complete will the information in the record be for the year?
So are we talking 2 companies for bidding, 3 companies for bidding? Do we need a bid at all if we keep it under a certain amount?
It depends on the price.
Yeah.
There's 3 different levels and depending on where the price is coming in.
Right.
So Chris did a lot of foundational homework already to try to get that laid out for us. So it's kind of like a menu. It's a cafeteria style. You go in, you pick up what you want, and depending on what you pick up, drives up the cost. And if you go up too wide, then you have to go out for an RFP, and it has to go out to, I think, at least 3 companies, right? And get the delays of the process. If you can keep it less than 9,900, yeah, it simplifies the process.
Well, one thing I'd like to add, in total agreement with what Chris was saying, is that we can gather data until we're blue in the face. But unless we can do something with that data, it's useless. And one thing that Northeast Aquatics did kind of gear us, I'm not pushing for NEA, but one thing they geared us to was to use that data to confront New Windsor or Cornwall to say, this is what, and this is going to be especially important in the tributaries, right, to see what's coming in. Yeah, we can see what's here now, but we need to see what's coming in and then turn to the towns and say, what can you do about this?
Yep, the advocacy part is important.
Yep.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, and just kind of some background for folks who follow how we communicate with some of our contractors. Northeast Aquatic, we were working with two fantastic representatives from Northeast Aquatic, and they did go separate directions, which is fantastic because it kind of gives us some great options now for as we move forward, trying to find the best resource for us in our lake. So any other specific questions for Chris? Chris, you had another agenda item on here. Did you want to mention it?
Oh, it was just a community thing. Just a community thing, sort of a pet peeve, happens to be on my street, but I'm sure I'm not the only one that experiences this. And I know Larry certainly will probably have something to add to this. And it's the idea of be a good neighbor and take care of your garbage cans. And it's not just your garbage cans. It's what happens to your garbage cans before, when you put them out and when you collect them. How good are you at taking what you've bagged up and kept it in the cans so that when the garbage men who you know are trying to get their day done and they grab everything and throw it in the truck, are little pieces falling out? And if pieces are falling out, like my good neighbor who I've spoken to, and it keeps going into the road culvert, and whenever heavy rain comes, it pulls down the little Wendy's barbecue sauce cups and the Cumberland Farms coffee lids down into the pipes. They block the pipe, and then it's wintertime. The culverts back up, and my end of Shore Drive turns into Lake Placid's skating oval. So, you know, and that's just my little anecdote for where I live, but I'm sure other parts of Beaver Dam have seen residents that are not so tidy. And it's just a simple, like, put somebody on it, get somebody in your house that is, you know, another son or daughter to be more of a steward for making sure that when the cans are being brought back to the house, I know this is over explanation, but to make sure that you have cleaned up not just the cans, but anything that is on the street, because anything that is on the street, anything that's in your yard, straws, cigarette butts, all of it goes into the culverts, collects, blocks, ice dams everywhere. It's not good. And then eventually when it does break through, that stuff goes in our lake and the birds eat it and all that. So let's be better stewards of our trash.
Thank you very much. Real quick, I said it last month, I'm going to repeat it again. Ice safety. If it ever gets cold again, guys, if it ever gets cold again, I'm going to send this out as a follow-up email if it hasn't already gone out yet. Just want to remind folks that as things get colder, the ice thickness is not tested in Beaver Dam Lake. Areas of thinner ice tend to be present. Caution is advised anytime you enter on a frozen lake. The ice thickness is not uniform across any body of water, and our lake really varies in certain spaces because of things like air temp, water temp, sunlight. We have a spring that runs into our lake. Last year we had a great frozen lake, and one area was still completely liquid water with no ice. Therefore, you are responsible for determining safe ice conditions for yourself and your accompanied guests. Please be safe and practice extreme caution this winter. Please note, no gas-powered motors permitted in or on our lake, no snowmobiles, and please, for the love of God, no vehicles. I would not like to pull another car, quad, etc. out of the lake. We've had plenty of that already. If you see it, don't contact a board member. We can't do anything for you. Contact the police. If you're contacting us, it's just an intermediary step, basically. So please contact the proper authorities if you have concerns, not us. It's my sincere hope that, again, no one gets injured. Again, this year, the Salisbury Mills Fire Department has, they're doing some ice rescue drills, I am assuming, that are predicated around us actually having ice. So if you see them out there, that's likely what they're doing, but they've also already been here to rescue a few folks this year, the couple of days we did have ice. So that being said, if at all possible, when it's deemed safe, we'd love to have another ice skating event here on the lake. These things tend to be like, we have ice for a little while and it's safe and it's go time. So these things are a little bit short notice, and we likely need a lot of volunteers to help clear ice and pull things together on the fly. So stay tuned for more information on that. Real quick, I have one community event question, and then I'll turn it over to Larry here. A resident reached out and asked if we could host a coffee hour style event for widows and widowers who live in the neighborhood. So they basically just want to meet as a group in the building. So these meet all of the qualifications of the actual bylaws of building usage. It's open to all residents who are included in this group. And I wanted to know the board's opinion on it, and if we could give an approval, should they organize themselves?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, because it's in line with all the bylaws and local law, there's absolutely no reason why they can't.
Okay, great. And they're not renting the space. It's not a private group. Okay. So when they ask to move forward specifically with that, we will let them know. All right, event committee. I'm gonna pass it to Larry.
All right, hello, everybody. Okay, so as Chris touched base on, I'm going to make it quick. I don't have a lot to cover, so I'm going to make it very simple. Community, right? So we're the lake board. Here we are. We're here to protect the lake, and that's the main thrust of this whole great board that we've got here. But we have this platform that we can use to reach people, to make this be the best community we possibly can. With the help of the residents who are here, we can continue to evolve as a community, take care of one another. So Chris mentioned garbage pails and stuff. There's no need for me to get into the details. Look, I'm going to probably say what I'm going to say, but I'm going to try anyway. So I came across this button today, and it says, I wondered why somebody didn't do something about it. And then I realized I am somebody. So if you see something, do something about it. If I see something happening where I live, I do something about it. If it's not my property and I grab my neighbor's garbage pail, I do something about it. You want to have a great community? This is the way to start, the little things. So we've started an event committee. We're a little bit slow to launch right now because of the holidays. We're a little bit slow to launch because of all these various illnesses that have been going around. So I don't have great events to tell you that are coming up because we haven't been able to plan them yet. But we did have a resident volunteer to make us a fantastic flyer for those of you who are not in the know. Okay, that flyer went out yesterday. Christy Manna, a resident who's a computer graphics designer, helped me out with the input of the board a little bit and our committee. We put together a really nice flyer that's going to be mailed out to anybody who's moved into the neighborhood within the last 5 years. 140 flyers went out today. What's in the flyer? You're going to see if you're new. One of the things we want to do is we want to stimulate involvement from the people in the community to make things better. We want more people to tune in to this fantastic monthly thing that we're doing. Our meeting, we need more input. We need more people to see and hear what we're saying. So as part of the flyer and the document went out, we made it easier for people who are new to figure out how to connect with all of us. All right. We included a few QR codes for those who are technologically advanced, who can scan a simple code. It will bring you to the Beaver Dam Lake webpage. It will bring you to our not board certified Facebook page, but it is still a tool that we really use to get the word out there and spread a lot of the really cool things that we're working on and planning. A special thank you goes out to Chrissy Wilbur. She is a real estate agent. She agreed to do our printing. She agreed to do the mailing and pay for the whole thing since we didn't have to spend any time. So we really, really appreciate that. So upcoming, we will have some new events. We do plan things like maybe a coffee meeting, maybe a book, club of some kind. There's been a lot of stuff tossed around. Again, It's a little bit slow to launch, but the idea is that right now, our initial action was to get this flyer together. And although it is not technically a board flyer, it is a flyer for their community. It's to get everybody involved. And that's really the main thrust of what we're trying to do. We just want people to love where they live. And if you want to be involved, man, we'd love you to be involved with us.
So what is the easiest way for folks to get involved with you? Do you want them to email the general BDL website and I can forward it?
Happy to get that way. So I don't even care. I'd put my personal email out there. I don't worry about that. If it's just spam or garbage, I can always delete it. But if for convenience sake, it's easier to email Erica and the board at BDL Board Advisory Board, then make that email. If you have something you want to bring forwards or you want to get involved, make that email. Erica can send it to me. I can filter it out to my event committee and we can make things happen. So don't stay silent. If you see something or if you have a great idea, don't say, oh man, I thought of that 6 months ago. Just say something. And if we can take action and put it in place, people want clam bakes. People want, all kinds of great events. Man, I got to have people who are willing to help. I got to have people who are willing to pitch, lend a hand. I've got a few great ladies on this great committee and we want to make things happen, but we need your community support. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So awesome.
All right.
The event committee, including Larry, brought to you the chili cook-off, which was an incredibly popular event. So
Anyone too.
anyone, so that's even better. But seriously, there have been a lot of folks who have come forward over the years saying they want to get involved, but they don't want to get involved as a board member or whatever, but they want to see these things brought to the community. So Larry starting this events committee is just like, is such a great way to pull folks into the fray without necessarily having to commit to the heavy responsibility of the board.
The success of the food drive and the toy drive that we had. And even though it was such a small, limited window because we had elections, we had all kinds of other things, holiday events, we still managed to collect 1,000 pounds of food and over 90 toys went into our local food pantry simply from participation by the fantastic residents that we have.
Yes, thank you again so much.
Great.
Those are the final things that I have specific on the agenda. So board member comments, any additional comments? I see.
Jason, welcome and thank you, Larry.
You okay?
Yeah.
Jason, do you want to get up and run out yet?
No, we're gonna keep them.
You want to run away yet?
For this. All right, great. Resident comments. This is the first meeting ever in the history of ever that we haven't had a single message in the chat box. So I'm hoping
For the record, I've been getting direct messages.
You've been getting direct messages. That's great.
Yeah, like specific nerdy stuff. Nothing that's,
specific nerdy stuff. Okay. Well, I'm glad for whoever is able to nerd out with Chris.
There's no update on the Cornwall Social Club either.
Okay.
So as I kind of forgot to mention, I'm in touch with the Cornwall Planning Board every month. They'll let me know whether or not Cornwall Social Club is officially on the docket for the next meetings coming up. And again, for the January and February meetings, the Cornwall Social Club at the former site of Pennings Nursery has not been on the agenda. They have not had any continued action. And as the same common theme is a sewer issue, which we've been talking about, they do not have access to the sewer system. And New Windsor's George Meyer is not budging on giving them the ability to access. So currently that is stalled out, the Cornwall Social Club.
Got it. They do have an Instagram page. A new fun fact.
Okay, I didn't know.
All right. Any other board member comments? Thank you for that. All right, hearing nothing. Kevin's on there.
Hey, Kevin.
Hello.
Hey.
You got anything to add, Kevin?
I only half the meeting, so sorry about that. And I'm in the car right now, so. All
okay.
good.
We appreciate you calling in on your way home from work.
Yeah, thanks for getting elected as chair.
Yeah, thank you for.
We did elect you as chair, Kevin. Congratulations.
That's because you're twice the man. Half the time and twice the man. Right.
Look at that.
Meetings and elections.
All right. Let's see. Hearing nothing from residents in the chat box, going once, going twice.
I move we adjourn.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Everyone in favor? Aye. All right.
Aye.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you so much, everyone. Again, if you have questions, comments, concerns, or you're just bored, you can email me at bdlboard@gmail.com with any concerns. So thanks so much. Stop.